The film opens in New Rochelle as the final match of the Challengers Championship begins. The umpire announces that the match is between Art Donaldson and Patrick Zweig. As Art begins to serve, the tension between him and Patrick is palpable. Both men, athletic and driven, begin to play intensely, and Art wins the first point. Then, the focus shifts towards the spectators in the stands and lands on a striking young woman sitting between the two sides of the court. Everyone is turning their heads side to side, following the ball, while she is stationary. Her gaze is fixed on Art, but she gets disappointed when he loses the next point. Patrick exclaims and darts a look at the woman. There is a sense of knowing between the two. Art steals her stare, and she gives him a nod. Art takes the next serve, with his signature move of placing the ball between the center neck of his racket. We cut back to 2 weeks earlier. Art wakes up in the morning with an alarm, while the same woman is already awake, applying lotion on her leg, which has a visible scar on it. They are in a hotel suite, where Art begins his morning stretches aided by a personal trainer. During this, the woman is watching sports news on TV while eating her breakfast. The news anchors are talking about Art being a 6-time champion of the 4 major Grand Slams, except he's never won the American Open. They talk about how he's in good shape after his injury and could make a comeback aided by the support of his wife, Tashi Duncan, who is also his coach. After Art is done with his warm-up, he smiles at his daughter, who's playing with her grandmother. He notices Tashi watching the news and mutes it. Later in the day, Tashi is training Art on the practice court. Then, they walk towards a championship court as Tashi gives him last-minute advice. He gives a look to his opponent as they cross each other, and the opponent feels threatened. There's a legion of fans waiting for Art at the end of the corridor. A few moments later, Tashi and Art are sitting in the dressing room. They are silent as Art looks at his younger picture, with a trophy hung up on the wall. A court coordinator interrupts them to inform them that they are ready to begin the match. Tashi looks into Art's eyes and gives him a strong word of encouragement. Art spits out his chewing gum in her hands and heads out. A few hours later, Art and Tashi are watching the highlights of the match. The dispirited look in their eyes exhibit that Art has lost the match. Tashi claims that she would love to have recovered after an injury like this, but Art isn't making use of this blessing. Art is unresponsive, but she wants to know what they can do to get his confidence back and win matches again. Art is tongue-tied. Just then, their daughter walks in asking if they can watch a movie. Tashi holds her and takes her back to her grandmother. She pacifies her by saying she should start watching it and order room service. Art wishes to keep staying at the hotel, and Tashi tells him they could even travel or concentrate on the foundation. Or he could just be a tennis player again. She asks him what he wants, and he puts his hand out to her. They hold each other, and he starts kissing her. She stops him and pulls her phone out. She suggests that he should play the New Rochelle tournament next, but he thinks a challenger tournament is beneath him. Tashi insists that they could get him a wild card entry. She thinks winning matches and getting his confidence back is paramount. He expresses that he loves her, but she merely responds by saying that she knows. A few days later, Patrick is at a hotel trying to get his credit card to work, but it's declined. He tries to convince the receptionist to let him stay the night, but she doesn't budge. He tries to sell his racket to her, but she wants cash or a card payment. He goes back to his car and parks it outside the club where the tournament will be held. He sleeps in his car to be woken up the next morning by the club staff. He asks him to leave the private property, but Patrick tells him he's a player in the Challengers tournament. He informs him he's a bit early for registration. Shortly afterward, he walks into the club and meets the lady at the registration desk. He spots her bagel at her desk as she continues to talk about how she was one of the judges a few years ago when Patrick played the juniors tournament. She notices Patrick's gaze and offers the bagel to him. He eats it while starts giving him information about his first match. He interrupts her to ask if he can get the prize money in advance, but she refuses. They are not allowed to make the payment until the player makes it through the tournament or gets knocked out. She jokingly gives him the option of losing the match and getting paid, but he isn't interested. She changes the topic to mention there is a wild card entry in the tournament, Art Donaldson. Patrick is stumped by this information. We go forward in time to the final match between Art and Patrick. During the first set, both players are putting their best foot forward until Art starts to lose momentum. He gets increasingly frustrated and gets a code violation for his aggression. The film goes back 13 years earlier, when Art and Patrick are playing a men's doubles match as a team. Their younger selves win the match and celebrate ecstatically. They embrace each other playfully and kiss their winning trophies. Their camaraderie is sexually implied by the way they are synchronistically connected with each other. Later, Art asks Patrick if he can go easy on him during the singles match tomorrow. He knows Patrick will win, but he wants him to give him a few points or a set. Patrick offers to give him the match if he wants. Art is grateful, but wants him to actually play and not just retire. Patrick wonders if he's bet some money on the match, but Art only wants his grandma to see him win. Patrick asks him not to guilt him with his grandmother, which leaves him with no other option. They enter a tennis court and take their seats in the stands. Patrick asks him if he will be going for the Adidas party that night. Art says he's not going and would like to be prepared for the match tomorrow. Patrick wonders why he doesn't want to meet Tashi Duncan, whom he believes is the hottest woman he's ever seen. Just then, Tashi walks onto the court. Both of them are awestruck by her, especially when she screams after scoring the winning point. Later that evening, Art and Patrick are at Tashi's party, staring at her advertisement posters for the company. Patrick thinks she's a star in the making who has a successful life ahead of her, including a fashion line, a nutritional supplement, and a foundation. Art thinks he shouldn't make fun of her. He agrees, and then goes on to make a sexual remark about her. They watch her dancing and are completely smitten. As she leaves the floor, they decide to quickly take the chance to introduce themselves. She claims to know who they are, even knowing their nicknames Fire and Ice. She asks them which one is which. Patrick wants her to guess. Art says he felt bad for her opponent earlier. Tashi thinks there's no need to feel bad for a sore loser and a racist, which makes Patrick chuckle. She asks Art if he's going to Stanford. He says he is, but wonders how she knows about it. Tashi says when she accepted the offer. They mentioned Art. Patrick wonders why she isn't going professional, but wasting time playing college tennis. Their conversation is cut short as Tashi is pulled away by her father. Art and Patrick ogle at her as she walks away. They discuss what to do next. Art wants to stay back and try to talk to her again, but Patrick seems downcast and wants to go back to the hotel. However, they can't stop looking in Tashi's direction. Art smiles and shakes his head at Patrick when he sees him doing the same. A little while after, they spot Tashi leaving the party. They call out to her, and she joins them. She asks them why they aren't preparing for tomorrow's match. Art brushes it off, saying it's just the junior championship, while Patrick matter-of-factly responds that they already know the result. Patrick asks Tashi if she wants to accompany them to the beach where they can smoke. Tashi doesn't smoke, but agrees to go with them. At the beach, Patrick asks Tashi why she wants to go to Stanford. She says she wants to study and doesn't want tennis to be her only skill. She asks Patrick when he's planning to play professionally. He thinks playing tennis is a great way to avoid having a job. Art points out that she screamed when she won. He's never heard anything like that before. Tashi gives him a knowing nod. She takes her leave and tells Art she will see him in college. The men both get bolder, and Art asks for her number on both of their behalf. She says she's not a homewrecker, but Art says they don't live together, and Patrick adds that it's an open relationship. Art makes sure Tashi knows Patrick has a girlfriend, but Patrick denies it. Patrick wants Tashi to come hang out with them later at their hotel room. Tashi bids them goodnight and leaves. Patrick tries one last time by saying that they have beer, which makes her laugh. Later that night, Patrick and Art are in their hotel room. Art begins to question Patrick's intentions if Tashi comes over. He asks him, will they keep shooting their shot until she makes out with one of them, while the other one sits in the bathroom? Patrick doesn't have a problem with that, and wonders if he thinks that's beneath him. Art confidently states that it would be beneath her. Patrick urges him to look at the possibility of her choosing him. Art doesn't want to believe that she would actually show up. Just then, there's a knock on the door. The boys frantically clear the mess and open the door to greet her. The three of them sit on the floor and share a beer. Tashi asks them how far back they know each other. Patrick replies that they've been bunkmates since they were 12. Tashi asks him if that's where he met his girlfriend. Patrick immediately clarifies that she's not his girlfriend, but quickly backtracks his claim to respond that he did. Tashi asks Art why he isn't pretending to be single. Patrick interjects that Art is in between women right now, which makes Art feel like he's portraying him as a player. But Patrick makes it sound like he's complimenting him and his looks. This makes Tashi wonder if the two of them have ever gone after the same women. They say it usually doesn't happen, and they have different types. Tashi asks if they are implying that she should be flattered about it, but Art thinks she's everybody's type. Then she asks if they've ever been intimate with each other. They laugh it off at first, but then Patrick recounts a story of how he taught Art how to pleasure himself. Tashi is intrigued and wonders who finished first. Patrick declares it was Art. Art is visibly embarrassed by this. After this story, Tashi mentions that they are out of beer. There is an awkward moment, and then she slowly goes to the bed and gestures to them to join her. They excitedly go to her, and she seduces them both. She looks at Patrick first. He leans in, but then she turns to Art and kisses him passionately. After this, she turns to Patrick and kisses him. Both of them kiss her neck, and it seems like it will turn into a Art and Patrick kiss each other, and she waits for them to stop, but they are intensely making out. She gets up and leaves. They ask her to wait, but she mentions again that she isn't a homewrecker. When they insist for her to stay, she gives them an offer whoever wins the match tomorrow will get her number. Tashi adds that Art can and should beat Patrick. Art wonders what she wants, but all she wants is to watch some good tennis. Next day, she's at the court watching them play as Patrick wins a point. We cut forward in time to the challengers match, where Patrick wins the first set. Then it cuts back to a week earlier, after Patrick has defeated his previous opponent. He is in the locker room checking his almost empty bank account on his phone. He switches to a dating app and swipes right on everybody. Patrick gets a match. He goes on a date with a woman at a hotel bar that evening, where he spots Tashi. Patrick follows her to the elevator, and they have a heated conversation. She wants to know if he's staying at the hotel. He asks why they are here and not at a villa. She points out that their daughter likes hotels, and then remarks that Art can't see them together. He already thinks Tashi got him the Challenger's gig to humiliate him. Tashi notices Patrick's date waiting at the bar. He says it's not really a date, he just needs a place to sleep. Tashi looks down upon his behavior. She asks him to lose quickly in the second round, as he usually does, and leave the tournament. As she gets into the elevator, she asks him to stay away from them. Patrick goes back to his date and immediately kisses her. We cut back again to 13 years earlier. Patrick and Art enter a practice court. Art wants to know if Patrick and Tashi have slept with each other already, implying that Patrick won the match between them. Patrick doesn't want to talk about it, but Art doesn't want to feel left out. Before they start playing, Art spits out his gum in Patrick's hand. Art then asks Patrick if he should do his normal serve if they didn't sleep with each other. However, if they did, he wants him to serve like him. Patrick contemplates and then places the ball between the center neck of his racket, indicating Art's signature serve. Art looks disappointed, but feigns his happiness for Patrick. We go forward in time to the Challengers match to a set break. Patrick gloats about winning the first set and taunts Art. They get back to the match as Art begins his serve. We again go back to 12 years earlier when Tashi is practicing on the college court. Art visits her and they share a meal after the match. Tashi mentions that Patrick will be visiting them and they should all get dinner. Art says he's surprised that they are still together. Tashi gets offended and asks him if Patrick is seeing other girls behind her back. Art tells Tashi that Patrick is not in love with her. Tashi wonders what makes him think she wants someone to be in love with her. Art asks her if she doesn't think she deserves it. Tashi gets angry, but Art earnestly tells her it doesn't make sense why anybody wouldn't be in love with her. As Tashi walks off, she comments that Art might definitely be the worst friend in the world. A few days later, Patrick visits the college. Art asks him how his tour is going and if he's seeing anybody. Patrick iterates that he's exclusively dating Tashi and came to Stanford to meet her. Art asks him if he's really committing to her. Patrick wants to take it step by step, but he likes her, and she makes him an honest man. Art turns away, which makes Patrick think he doesn't believe him. Art connivingly adds that he's just not sure what Tashi thinks about this. He gets into Patrick's head by saying he doesn't want him to get hurt. He adds that he just got the impression that she's not thinking about this as a serious relationship. Patrick leaps towards him and calls his manipulation out. He thinks he's a snake, but he's also proud of him, since he would be doing the same thing if he were in his place. Art denies he's doing anything, but Patrick assures him that it's fine. It's exciting to see him acting so worked up. This seems to be the element that's missing from his tennis. Later, Patrick and Tashi are in Tashi's dorm room. They start making out, and Patrick says he misses her while he's on tour. Tashi asks if this is his reason for not winning any matches. She starts talking about a particular match which he could have won. This turns Patrick off, and he stops. He asks her when she was going to tell him about Art. He feels bad for Art. She wonders if he's not intimidated by him. Patrick declines, but she thinks he should be because he's smart, good-looking, and great at tennis. Patrick wonders if they are still playing for Tashi's number because he thought he won. Tashi thinks this is his problem. He always thinks he's won before the match is over. This offends Patrick, and he asks her if they are still talking about tennis. She gets off the bed and starts getting ready for her match. He asks her why she cares so much about this, and Tashi says that they are dating, and it would be embarrassing for her if he sucks. He gets back at her by saying that he's not playing college tennis. She takes offense, but he adds that he's happy for her being in college, but he doesn't want her to be his coach. Patrick asks if this is her new strategy to pump herself up before her match. She says fighting doesn't get her energy going. She thinks it's ridiculous how he calls her every week, whining about how he's getting screwed over on tour. He says he's not a lapdog like Art, who's going to sit around and get punished by her. He pushes her buttons by saying maybe she needs someone like him, who can just be Mr. Tashi Duncan, a member of her fan club. He's her peer, not her groupie. Their fight ends with Patrick wishing her luck and walking off. Tashi looks terribly upset. Art sits in the stands and texts Patrick that the match is about to begin. Patrick texts back that they had a big fight and he's not coming. Art watches Tashi play. She gets more and more aggressive as the match goes on, until she ends up severely injuring herself by ripping a ligament. Art jumps over to the court and helps her. A few moments later, Art is by her side in the college sanatorium. Patrick runs in to help Tashi, but she tells him to leave. We go ahead in time to the Challengers match, where Art has gained a lead in the second set. Art gets another point, but Patrick starts contesting the call. He rudely asks the umpire if Art is being favored, which gets him a code violation for unsportsmanlike conduct and a point penalty. Patrick asks Art if this is how he plans to get his points, but Art is ready to continue with the game. We cut back to college, where Art is practicing with Tashi as she is recovering. She requests him to stop going easy on her. They start playing again, and Tashi exerts herself to the point where she takes a tumble and smashes her racket in anger. Defeatedly, she leaves the court. Next evening, Art and Tashi are having dinner and talking about tennis. She gives him advice on the adjustments he could make to get better. Art takes her advice sportingly. He asks her if she wants to be his assistant coach. He thinks whatever happened between them was a long time ago, but she thinks it wasn't. Then she asks him if this means that he's not in love with her anymore. He tells her he's really proud of her, that she's unwilling to quit tennis. She adds that unfortunately her only skill in life might just be limited to tennis. Art gets a bit pensive and says he might be saying something stupid, but he wonders now what would have happened if he had beaten Patrick. She asks him why he wants her to join his team. He makes it clear that it's not because he feels guilty. It's only because he wants to win. Tashi tells him that he could beat him now if they played again. Art says they don't keep in touch, but Tashi thinks technically she was a homewrecker. After a brief pause, Tashi tells him that he still hasn't answered her question, if he's still in love with her or not. Shortly afterward, they are in the parking lot. He says he really wants to kiss her, but if he tries, she will think he's really the worst friend in the world. She walks closer to him and kisses him. We go ahead in time to the challengers match, where Art wins the second set and Tashi applauds. Patrick smashes his racket in anger and gets another code violation. We cut to earlier that week, where Tashi is in the hotel lobby working on Art's strategy. Patrick walks up to her and passes a comment on it. She asks him if he's prostituting himself again for a place to sleep. Patrick asks her to have a cigarette with him. He wants to talk to her. She says she doesn't smoke and isn't interested in talking to him. He keeps waiting for her, and she finally gives in. A few moments later, they are standing in an alley. He proposes that she should be his coach. She gets pissed off and slaps him. She says her best advice for him would be to quit. She adds that he doesn't even have any dreams. He scoffs at her for living the dream with Art, but he can see that she hates him. He says that Art wants to retire, but she won't let him, and he will do whatever she wants. Patrick then asks her if Art knows about Atlanta, and insinuates that she came here for him. She laughs at his assumption and walks away. He says he's going to beat him if they make it to the final. He gives her his phone number on a paper slip, in case she changes her mind. She says she won't, but keeps the slip in her pocket. The third set at the challengers match resumes, where Art has won the first game of the third set. We cut 8 years earlier to the Atlanta Open. Patrick comes to the stands, where Tashi is making Art practice. We quickly cut to the day before the challengers match. There is a thunderstorm outside. Art is sitting inside a sauna room when Patrick walks in. He requests him not to demolish him in the finals tomorrow, but then congratulates him for making it to the finals. Art asks him to cover himself, but Patrick laughs and says it's a sauna. He asks him why he's so angry with him, even after all these years. He thinks it's probably because he's still disturbed by the fact that she was into someone like him. Art reminds him that they were just teenagers. He chuckles, and we go back to Atlanta. Patrick sees Tashi sitting alone at a hotel bar. He spots the ring on her finger, but sits down in front of her. She looks upset, and then they start passionately making out. We return back to the sauna, where Art admits that he does find it disturbing. Patrick says there isn't any need for it. Many girls were into him, but they didn't want to marry him. It's not what he's for. This makes Art pose the question back to him, what is he for? The film cuts again to Atlanta, where Art walks into the hotel and sees Tashi and Patrick together. He gets interrupted by a fan who wants his autograph. When he looks back towards the bar, he finds Tashi and Patrick gone. We come back to the sauna, and Patrick states he always wanted him to beat him. This would be the perfect confidence booster. Art laughs and knows what he's trying to do, but Patrick denies it. It's only a challenger game, and he doesn't need to play mind games. Art tells him that they both know Patrick has more at stake. Art attacks him further by saying he never grew up, and thinks he can still talk to him like he is his peer. But it's not about coming from the same place. It's only about winning, and Art has won a lot. Patrick reminds him he's never beaten him, but Art doesn't care. He hasn't beaten most of the contenders at tournaments like the challengers. Winning matches matters the most. Patrick wonders if he's trying to say Patrick's existence doesn't matter. Art twists the knife by saying that he doesn't matter, even to the most obsessive tennis fan in the world. Patrick says he genuinely came here to wish him luck, and that he misses playing with him. Art walks out. Later that evening, Tashi puts her daughter to sleep and gets back to her room. Art asks her if it matters to her that he wins tomorrow. She wants to know if it matters to him, since he's the professional competitor. But all he wants to know is if she loves him no matter what. Tashi affirms that she's not his mother, or a god. She assures him that he will beat Patrick, but he glumly wonders how she will look at him if he still can't beat him. She says she will look at him exactly like the way she does now, but Art knows she won't. He starts to make a declaration which might make her angry. He confesses that he wants to retire from tennis. She tells him he can quit whenever he wants to. He doesn't need her permission. He still wants her to coach him. He's playing for both of them. Tashi lets out a sigh, and then tells him that if he doesn't win tomorrow, she will leave him. She asks him if this helped him, and they kiss. As things get heated up, he abruptly stops. He puts his head in her lap, and both of them look miserable. He wants her to hold him until he falls asleep. We cut back to the challengers match. Art and Patrick are tied at 5 games in the third set, and are giving each other tough competition. Art wins the point and leads with 6 games. We go back to the night before the match. After Art has fallen asleep, Tashi sneaks out of the room. She meets Patrick outside the hotel as the dust storm rages on. He says they can go back to his hotel if she doesn't want to be seen. Tashi makes it clear she's not meeting him to sleep with him. Then, she tells him that she's asking him to lose the match tomorrow. He mentions that he also wants something, but she doesn't care. She disagrees. She's taking very good care of her little white boys. After a brief power play between them, he agrees to do it. They continue fighting, and she tries to leave his car, but ultimately, she sleeps with Patrick. She tells him he has to make it look like Art earned the win. We cut back to the challengers match. Patrick looks at Tashi and serves. Art gets the point, which leads to the final match point. Tashi looks extremely stressed. Patrick serves and makes another fault. He has to make one more fault to lose the match, but he keeps staring at Tashi. Then, he looks at Art and changes his serve stance. He places the ball at the center neck of the racket, indicating to Art that he slept with Tashi yet again. Art is taken aback and stands there motionless as Patrick serves and wins the point, which brings it back to a deuce. Art looks at Tashi and then at Patrick, who is smiling. He swears at Patrick and looks disturbed, which makes him earn a code violation for obscenity. Art gives up and tells the umpire that Patrick can serve. The umpire reminds him to get back into position for Patrick to serve. Patrick serves weakly, and Art doesn't strike the ball. Patrick wins the game, which leads to a tiebreaker set. As the final set begins, Art and Patrick stare at each other. Art smiles at him, and Patrick has a smirk on his face. They start playing with more passion and vigor than ever before. It's truly a competition between two talents. Tashi sits up, finally invested in the game, and following the ball like everyone else. They come closer to the net, and Patrick smashes the ball. Art leaps into the air, falls over the net, and lands straight into Patrick's arms. Both of them hug, and Tashi jumps from her seat and screams in excitement as the film ends.